Hey there, this is Robert, and you are listening to The Robert Budd Show. And today, this show is about failure, doing stuff over and over again until you get it right. Not really, but this is about the fourth or fifth time that I've done this intro, and we'll see how this one goes. So, thank you so much for tuning in. In these episodes, I interview those in my life that I come across that spark my interest in what they're up to in their life. It's usually because I consider them successful in their lives, however that might look like, whether it's a successful career, successful relationship, successful way of how they raise their kids, like their kids didn't end up in jail or worse. Things like that. So that's what I like to dig into. I get into it personally with my host, or I'm the host, with my guest. What makes them tick? What influences they had as a kid? What kind of mentors they had? How many times did they fail and either stop doing whatever they're doing or push on? And so on today's episode, we have Stefan Laursen, and he is my brother from another mother. Stefan and I really hit it off. We work together at Rancho La Puerta every summer at Family Week in Rancho La Puerta, and from pretty much the first day one, we just kind of clicked, right? He's from Denmark, and I'm from California, so there is no way that we're brothers, and he's got a bit of an accent. So we don't look alike, we don't sound alike, but we do act alike, that's for sure. Anyways, so Stefan, he's got a master's in political science, which was super interesting talking to him off mic. And I'm going to definitely do another episode with Stefan, because what we talked about off mic could be, 3 shows in itself. Anyways, he started his athletic career playing division badminton in Denmark, and then eventually became a professional triathlete and cyclist. So he still competes in those sports, but now his focus is on the Xterra World Championships, which are coming up very soon. It's August now, 2008, and they're coming up in the fall. So that's pretty exciting. So what he does for his day-to-day, what keeps him busy, is he designs and produces triathlon wetsuits. And I'm really interested in these also, because being a body surfer, I cannot stop thinking about how I would design a wetsuit for myself being a body surfer. Anyways, he also designs carbon fiber bikes and wheels, and his companies are called Synergy and Synergy Wetsuits and Gray Cycling. So I would definitely check both of those out. It's synergywetsuits.com and graycycling.com. And he also runs a hedge fund called Common Sense Capital. So without further ado, let's just get right into Stefan's interview. Here we go. Okay, so I always start out every conversation usually for a sound check.
Yeah.
What did you have for breakfast this morning?
I have my usual yogurt with soaked muesli, and it's fantastic.
Really?
Yeah.
Every day? Even
Every
when
day.
You're not here?
Even not here, yeah. I don't soak it at home, but
Would you
I
soak
want
it
to.
in?
It's soaked here from the ranch. Yeah.
Right. So what do you do at home?
I have a wetsuit business.
Mm-hmm.
And
No, I mean, how do you soak it?
Oh.
I'm really interested in this breakfast, man.
Good. I don't. That's what I said. I was going to do
You just eat it raw?
Yeah, I eat yogurt with muesli on it.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right. Where'd this come from? Why
So-
did you start doing that?
I think I've been doing it for ever, almost.
Really?
Yeah.
Any particular reason? Like why that combination or
I think
anything?
it's fairly healthy.
Yeah? And easy?
Easy.
I'm intrigued with why people, or if people even eat breakfast and what they have. I mean, you're an athlete.
Yeah.
And is there any athletic benefits to having that?
I think
besides being a little healthy.
A low-fat yogurt with acidophilus and muesli for your fiber is good.
Mm.
You can get it anywhere, almost anywhere where you travel. You can pick up that combination.
Yeah. So you've been doing this for, like you said, forever. How many years is forever? Because there's got to be some professional athletes out there like, well, maybe I should try this combination.
Yeah, I'm not a dietary guru by any means, so. But I've definitely come a long way from where I used to eat, that's for sure.
What would you have before? What would you have typically before a big race? Maybe, I don't know, when you started out your career.
Yeah, so that's actually a sticking point for me. So I specialized in short distance, so they're high intensity, and so I usually wouldn't eat. Because even 3-4 hours of digestion wouldn't be enough when you're really kicking it hard.
What was the short distance? How long would it be?
So the specialty for my body type is like 750 meter swim, a 20K bike, and a 5K run.
How long would that take you?
It takes about 50 minutes.
15 minutes. So that's short for you.
Yeah.
What's your best time?
Around 50 minutes.
50 minutes. I find the same thing. Like I can't eat if I'm just doing a 50-minute workout or high intensity.
Yeah.
I don't eat. I may take in some coffee or something like that, but anything that I have to digest, it will hold me back. It'll slow me down.
Yeah.
Even when I'm teaching here at the ranch, I won't eat breakfast because if I teach 3 classes in a row, I'll feel too sluggish and heavy. You know, like I got to digest too much stuff.
Yeah. At home, I have 2 high-intensity workouts a week, usually, and I don't eat breakfast before those. And I actually read some studies that suggest that there's a huge benefit in not having that a couple of times a week.
Yeah.
Because you tap into a different energy system that will come in handy.
I agree.
Yeah.
What did the other days look like?
As for my training,
yeah.
So I usually, in a good week, I have 2 core workouts that I'll have a group ride that's pretty intense, and then a brick run, which means a run right after you come back from the ride, and then I'll go swim later on the day for recovery, and I do that on Saturdays and Wednesdays, and then the other days of the week are actually usually workouts that are getting you ready for those 2 core sessions, because those sessions are usually around 3+ hours each, so that makes up a bulk of 6 hours, and then I'm just trying to collect another 4-5 hours of training in various swimming and maybe one long run, something that's not as taxing but are still working the basic systems I need to work through.
On those longer days, are you going your race speed, or is it?
No. I when I was younger, I used to make the mistake of having too much intensity in my training. And I'd often not be fully recovered for when it really mattered. Now I spread it out so I know I can just handle 2 hard workouts a week. Some of these workouts, you're going above your anaerobic threshold, so for hour and a half. So it's intense.
Yeah.
And so to recover from that, and not to get into overtraining, you need to make sure that your other workouts are really measured.
Do you find that guys in your sport typically overtrain because they go too high intensity too much, or is it getting smarter, like working in your thresholds and your heart rate zones and stuff like that?
So things have changed dramatically in the last, I'd even say the last few years. There's been an explosion of coaches that come out and have a fair degree of education behind them on how to structure workouts. But the biggest advancement, I'd say, is all these new smartwatches like Polar and Sunto and Garmin have come out with watches that track your power from your power meter on your bike. You can even get a power meter for your running shoes.
Wow.
You have your heart rate monitor on for all your workouts. And what happens is these programs basically create stress scores from all your various workouts. And it allows the coach or yourself or even sometimes automated programs to calibrate your training much more carefully. And you can really track your progress in a way that you really couldn't do before. Strava and Training Peaks are probably the most known and the best used apps for that kind of stuff. And I have a coach. I'm coached by Josiah Middock, who's the world champion for cross triathlon. That's become my new sport. I used to race professionally in triathlons, then took some years off to have a family, and now I'm back doing Xterra.
Oh, okay.
Which is fun because it's not the same. I'm not looking at my old comparing to my old results, going, oh my god, I'm not running a 15-minute flat 5K anymore,
Yeah.
But I can kind of improve with mountain biking as a new skill, and I'm not looking at my younger self all the
not
time.
having to compare what you used to do.
Yeah,
that's probably pretty good for your brain, huh?
Yeah, it's pretty painful otherwise.
Yeah.
But I do feel when I get into a regular triathlon, it's a much more natural flow for me. It's like there's a whole biofeedback system that kicks in. And
but how does your personality feed into what you chose as a sport?
Yeah, for my body type, I should have probably been a wrestler or something a little more like you. We're a little muscular.
Beefy to be doing what we're doing, like running, swimming.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm by no means overly heavy. I'm 158 pounds and 5'10", so it's not terribly off. But the guys I'm racing against are 140 pounds and 5'10", 5'8".
Yeah.
So there's at the highest level just a certain degree of biomechanics and genetics that kick in, and it's not necessarily that you have bigger VO2 and lung capacity, or it sometimes simply comes down to that you have this body weight and you can put out this type of power. And in my case, I can put out the power, and when I was racing, I could make up what I lost in the swim. I could make up on the bike, but when I would come off the bike tired, I was kind of heavy for the run, and you'd be passed up by these super light runners.
Yeah.
And I thought a lot about how it maybe wasn't the perfect sport for my body type.
Why'd you pick it? Why?
I picked it. I was. Well, I should give you a little background. Then when I was 10 years old, I was a badminton player as a kid. And my brother was a quite good badminton player. He was 5 years older, like the star of our club. And I was terribly uncoordinated and kind of laughing stock of the badminton hall. And I remember going to a summer camp, and I'd never played baseball. I grew up in Denmark, and I was at a summer camp in the States visiting my grandma. And I was just horrible because I didn't even know what the game was about, but obviously I couldn't hit the ball at all. And I just remember having this bitter feeling like I'm going to get good at something because I obviously suck at everything.
Yeah.
And for a 10-year-old, that's a pretty strong, but I made like a very strong commitment. And I figured, the only thing I had that I could count on was my willpower, because I didn't have any talent. I didn't have any natural coordination. I didn't have anything that I could really do that kind of pushed me in one direction or another. But I had willpower and I had time. So I just started training, 30 hours a week.
Then?
At 10.
Really?
And so, and I have still all my old training, because I wrote everything down. I planned it. I didn't know what I was doing. Back then, science wasn't so strong. I read a couple of books, but there wasn't much about it. Yeah. And the leading tenets of training was hard one day, easy another day. And that's basically what I live by.
Yeah.
But, I started waking up a tremendous amount of hours training. And so when you're 10, 11, 12, and you can run everybody down, suddenly you didn't have to be a technical genius, because no other 10-year-old or 11-year-old could keep up. They'd be like totally pooped out after, 10 minutes of just being played all over the court. And then when I was 13, a friend of mine suggested we did a triathlon. And this was in 1983, and triathlons were sort of invented in 82 or thereabouts, 1980s. And so we trained. I didn't even know how to swim, but he had like a little 20-foot long pool, and so we tried to make it from one end to the other. And this was back in April in Denmark, and it was up like 8 degrees. It was pretty cold. But I finished third in the race. Barely made it through the swim, but didn't drown. But then I just mowed everybody down on the bike and the run. Mm-hmm. And that was overall with all the adults. And so I thought, hey, this is kind of good, fun. And so I started doing a few more, and I would win every race I did. And then I took up swimming, to learn how to swim. Yeah. And so by the time I was 16, this was 1986, triathlon was exploding around the world, and it was possible to start making a living in the summer, going to races where they would put up a small, maybe a couple $1,000s in prize money, and there were so many races back then. You could literally just look at the schedule and cherry pick, make sure that, Scott Tinley didn't show up, because he was doing the same thing at the time. He's one of your local boys in San Diego.
Say his name again?
Scott Tinley.
Scott Tinley.
Yeah. You and I have some fun history. I can tell you some stories, but
well, you can. If you don't mind. Want to pick a story?
I remember when I was 16, and I went to do the San Diego International Triathlon, and I'm standing on the beach with. So I had to sneak in as a pro. I was still underage, and I didn't want to pay the entry fee, so I'd walk up to the race director when he would stand there and talk to the other pros, and I'd pretend I knew them, slap them on the back, and hey, that was a great week, a race last weekend, and then just kind of give my credentials that I was from Denmark, and could they comp me for the entry? And so I usually get in because they thought I was one of them.
Yeah, nice.
And then I'd be standing on the beach in San Diego, and I remember this. Big waves this day, and I'd never swum in waves like that. I live on the Danish east coast, or I live there, and there's no waves. It's just all flat, the waves on the west coast, and they're not this big. Yeah. So Scott gave me some friendly advice. He said, what you do is when you run out to that wave, you try and get over the wave.
Friendly advice.
So, and he sounded real convincing, and this guy, Scott Molina, was standing next to him, and they're like, you just go out and you just jump, as high as you can, And so the gun goes off. This is like right before this. So the gun goes off, and we all run out into the surf. And I did kind of notice that they were all diving under right when I got smacked in the face with a giant wave, and sent, 100 feet further back. Yeah. And I remember coming up going like, oh, you jerks, And then I had to play catch up the rest of the race. But
how does that transition to going from doing the sport into the business that you're in? What sparked you to start in the business that you're in now?
Okay, so that's actually maybe the only interesting story I got. So when I did that, I think this was actually my second triathlon. It was an open water swim, and it was in the spring, and you needed a wetsuit. Denmark is, brutally cold winters, and I just simply couldn't afford a wetsuit, and my parents couldn't afford a wetsuit for me. And it's just not. My parents are academics, teachers, and this was not high priority, So I went and bought the smooth
Your
skin.
Racing is not high priority because it wasn't
I was
academics?
13 years old, kind of thing.
Okay.
So they didn't think it was a big priority. They were more interested in me playing the violin, doing something, more fitting their value system. Yeah. So I went and bought the smooth skin rubber, and I took it to school, and in homeroom, had my teacher help me sew it. So I sewed my first wetsuit, glued it together, and it worked great. Really? And because, I wasn't a good swimmer, because I didn't pick up swimming until I started triathlons. Yeah. So that led me into starting to modify this wetsuit as much as I possibly could in order to make it as fast as I could to make up for my own inability in being a good swimmer. So as the years went on, I would just continue to make better and better wetsuits.
Just for yourself, though?
It was mainly for myself in the beginning, and then others caught on and wanted to get in on it. And I eventually met a guy who had started a company called Speed Suits out of New Zealand. And he and I collaborated on a brand called Orca. that later became the biggest wetsuit brand in triathlon. But I broke out and did my own brand, Synergy, and today all the pros who want an edge up on their swim come to us. I'll give you a great story about that. Just a few years ago, Frederick van Leert, who was the Ironman world champion, sent me an email and said, I've heard you guys have the fastest wetsuit. And I've tried everybody's wetsuit, but I'd like to try yours. And so we don't sell in Europe very much. So we sent him one over, and he goes, oh my God, I can't believe how fast this suit is. Would you please sponsor me? I don't want to ask for any money. I don't want to ask for any, I'm not asking for anything from you. I just want your product. And you can use me for as much promotion as you want. And there's no sport in the world where you get the world champion and the biggest piece of the sport to give you that kind of endorsement.
Yeah.
And so we've actually never paid any of our professional athletes. We have another pro, Josiah Middock, who's the Xterra World Champion, also swimming in ours. And he's a little bit like me. Swimming is not his strongest, so he needs every bit of the best wetsuit in order to be competitive.
Yeah.
Because if he even loses 10, 15 seconds off the lead group, you wouldn't believe it, but I can count 5 races he's had to out sprint or come down to a sprint with somebody where you're talking about you have to have a photo finish, and that's in a 2.5 hour, 3 hour race. To be that close with your competition is incredible.
What kind of R&D do you guys receive from your athletes to make the suits better?
So it's interesting because but it's all interesting now.
Yeah.
Now you're speaking to my passion. But when I used to do it back then, I was really focused on the dynamics of what made a wetsuit fast. And the primary benefit of a wetsuit is the buoyancy. So the higher you are in the water, the less resistance you carry through the water. So that's number one. And number two is that you have to have your wetsuit balanced, because most people, actually almost every single person, if you take off the top 10 best swimmers in the world that may have perfect balance, the place where other swimmers can make up a tremendous amount of time in the pool, and even just fragments of a second, is having the best balance, where your feet are just at the right height in the water surface. By pressing your chest into the water, so your hips come up. And when you are as flat as you possibly can be in the water, you really move a lot faster. If you look at poor swimmers, usually bikers, so in our sport, people with big thighs, they end up swimming with their legs sinking.
Yeah.
And that makes, for a slow swim. So you can be almost as strong as you want to be in your arms, but if your legs are dropping, you're just not going to be that fast. So what Josiah needs, who is a phenomenal biker, is he needs a wetsuit that can lift his hips and his legs more, especially his lower legs, because he has big calves. And calves weigh, or muscle tissue weighs 7 times more than fat tissue. So you're looking at some significant weight that's throwing off his balance. And of course, he's not very top heavy, because he's an incredible runner as well. So I look to design a wetsuit that fits his specific type. Then we have a new guy, Karsten Madsen, who may eventually take the throne as the world's fastest in this sport. And he comes from a swimming background. And so he is looking for a totally different type of suit. Buoyancy is not as important for him, but flexibility is. He needs the ultimate amount of flexibility and streamlinedness in the water. So that suit will be designed with a swimmer's body.
So you come out with different lines for swimmers, or different lines for runners, or heavier.
Yes. So wetsuits, we have a couple of we can call them mass market entry level wetsuits that carry all the main features that you want as a new athlete, or a triathlete who is looking for an all round good suit. And they're fantastic. They really are. I swim in it myself. And then we have these elite suits that are designed for specific types of athletes inside the, people who come from a swim background or come from maybe a running or biking background. And they're just going to need different things in that suit. And
What would you tell yourself, I mean, in the inside of the business-wise, when you started, what kind of advice would you give yourself when you first, you've been in it for how many years now? How long have you had this, been doing wetsuits and in the business of wetsuits?
30 years now.
30 years. Yeah. What would you tell yourself 30 years ago that what would you tell yourself 30 years ago that would make it easier on you? What kind of tips or if there's somebody out there who's just starting or whatever?
That's a very good question. I think actually the conclusion I've come to, because I've asked myself that a little bit, I took the hard road because I didn't have any mentors. I didn't have anybody to kind of guide me or tell me, to avoid all the pitfalls that you otherwise fall into. And so I'd say business-wise, I knew I was a good designer of a product because I really understood what was needed and how to put it together. But I didn't have the business experience to know when I was getting taken and I think I can rake up $1 million of losses that I've had from people going bankrupt on me or cheating me one way or another. And coming from Denmark, where you have a very homogeneous society over there, and there's a very high level of trust among people. So you don't grow up with this sense that you have to protect yourself. And when I first started out in business in the States, I would give people credit and just think that they were like me, that of course they're going to pay. And now, of course,
as we all know, that doesn't always happen.
That doesn't always happen. And so now I have a really fantastic business manager, and she is always has my back and makes sure that I don't make those mistakes again. And so that has been a brilliant thing to have. So once you can afford to have somebody who can have the back end of your business, which is really the backbone of a business, somebody who does your books, somebody who makes sure you're compliant, everything you have to do, that you get paid and that you pay everything. I'd say that's 50% of a business. And when you start out in business, it's never what you think about.
Right.
Because business, in the very beginning, is the fun of making a product and marketing the product and getting it out there, and it's all good fun. But without that backbone and the back end, making sure that all the fundamentals are in place, you're eventually going to run your head into a wall. And I wish I'd known more about that. And I wish I'd had some mentors who could have said, you don't want to be giving credit without having this kind of document signed, or that kind of stuff that, they don't teach you in school.
Yeah.
Well, maybe in business school. Not the school I went to. of hard knocks.
Yeah. What about being the creator of it and knowing your product how you know it? Could somebody do it with an idea of, let's say, an idea of it, but not have the physical experience of being in the water with it?
Yeah, that's a great question. No, you can't. So, there are a lot of copycats out there, and China, is a big producer of a lot of products that are not always thought through very well, because they are made kind of from an opportunistic place rather than one out of experience. So I would say it's very, very difficult to make a fantastic quality product if you don't have the experience and understand what goes into it. And we've been down this road where we found some products that we thought, hey, this would be a good complementary product, and maybe we didn't understand it 100%, and sure enough, it's a failure because it didn't come from the right place. So now the kind of products we make, and we make a lot of products, they all come from things we know. I mean, every single product that I make and sell and design, it comes from something I have everyday life experience in. And I wouldn't dare touch something that I don't understand, because it is for sure fail.
Yeah, I would just imagine that just trying to promote something that you don't fully understand, it's hard to get behind something that you don't know.
Yeah,
fully.
you can't even become passionate about it.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, passion is such a huge thing.
Yeah.
What is, I know we're running short on time, what is something that if you could have metaphorically a gigantic billboard and you can tell everybody something, what would it be? Just, it could be in business, it could be in life, it could be, what would you want to get out there into the public?
I heard a great one, and so I can't take credit for it.
Okay, that's fine.
But I took my first meditation class yesterday, and we were just kind of talking a little bit about the busy mind and everything, and suddenly it just kind of came out. I don't even think the guy who said it knew what he had said, but I heard it and I had to repeat it right away, and it was, there's nothing there, it's here. And I thought it was fantastic, because in our busy minds, we can concoct all kinds of stuff, and our minds are always going. But in the end, there's nothing there. It's all here in the moment. And I think that's something that we really need to take on.
Yeah. As a father, what would you, how do I want to put this? I mean, to be a mentor, to be an example, how do you walk the line of not telling your kids how to do it and then allowing them to experience it, and yet have them, use your experience?
Yeah, that's a great question, because my oldest son now is making some of the similar products that I do, and I think he quickly realized this thing about the selling your hours, is a limited way of moving forward in life, versus selling a service or a product that you can, you can scale.
Yeah.
And so I've had that conversation with him, and I think he really gets that. I've of course wanted him to follow the same idea, where he looks at something that he's passionate about and tries to improve on a product, because most products have already been made. But he, let's say it's a bicycle glove. He's an avid mountain biker, and he rides with these gloves. And we talk about how can we improve it. And it's a fantastic glove made by the best companies, but there's still things that can be made better. And so we add those design elements, and he comes up with his own graphics, and before you know it, you got a product. And once you have a product, he comes up with a name that he wants to promote, his nickname, Bun.
Yeah.
And so now he's starting to make a little series of things that can be like a substitute for a job, but has much longer perspectives. So that is one element. But the other element, because I've thought about it a lot, having been a professional athlete, I didn't want to push my own children into sports. I made a big mistake in not nurturing a love for sports early on in my children's life. And when I can give advice to any young parent, it is that of course you never push your kids into anything, but you nurture a love for it. So if you would like your kid to be a swimmer, that's a very good, healthy sport. You early on nurture that love for swimming, when they're a baby and a toddler, and you just keep nurturing it, not because you're never telling them they're going to be on a swim team, but you're slowly coaxing in that direction.
Yeah.
And it'll come from the child itself. But if you don't nurture it, they won't go into any of that, and then social media is going to take them down, on their phones and all that. And so now with my last child, he's 12 now, I got him just in time, and I'm nurturing a love for biking, and now I'd like to get him into a little swimming But it's all fun and games. And I just know if I keep doing this gently, but still making sure it happens every so many times a week, he'll eventually clasp on, because at some point a child wants to create their identity, and it usually comes around, or that identity is also built on their activity and what they see. And if they've been doing it since they were really young, they're going to be good at it. And every child needs something to build their confidence. If you're not doing great in school, well, hey, at least you're fast riding mountain bikes, And it doesn't matter, because as long as you have some kind of anchor for your confidence, then you actually can build on that, and it'll help pull everything else up. That's what happened to me. I was no great student or anything, but I built a lot of confidence through my sport, and I tell you that the confidence maybe was the main thing that helped advance me, and now I have a successful business, and did well in school, and eventually, and but I don't know if it would have gone that way without having that from early on. And I worry for children who and adults who don't have confidence because they were never given an opportunity, or had an ability, or were able to take an opportunity to build themselves up in just one area that they could be really good at. And you know how it is. We have to be good at something.
You got to latch on to something when the world gets rough and it starts stepping on you.
So at least you got that, because the world will step on you. That's given. You're going to get your knocks. Everybody will. And you got to have something to weather those storms. And so if you're not good at anything, I mean, that's probably where some of the that's a whole other issue. What happens then? But
Well, I know we're running short on time, and I really want to thank you for being here, and I would love to continue this conversation at another time. So thank you so much for...
We'll do another one next year.
All right, sounds good.
Okay.
All right, great. Thanks, my brother.
You got it, brother.
All right, and there you have it. There's the interview with Stefan, and I know it was super quick. I definitely wanted to do more, and there will be a part 2. We talked in length about other topics that we want to dive into off topic of our sport and what we do for a living. So there will be a part 2. So, to be continued. So thank you very much for listening. Anything that is linkable, I have on my website, robertbudd.net/podcast. You can find anything that I find that is linkable inside of these interviews, and I put them on my website. And you can also find other archived podcasts that I've done with multiple different people on multiple different subjects, wide-ranging. That's also on robertbudd.net/podcast. Also, if you would like a very short email from me once a month about all kinds of different stuff that I dig up. It could be things on wetsuits. It could be things on motivational speakers or food or exercise. I just dig up all kinds of stuff. Different books that I'm reading. I'm reading a rad book right now that I'm going to throw out there as a recommendation for the people who get this email. If you would like to get this email, go to my website, robertbudd.net. Scroll down, there's a place to put your email, drop it in there, and you'll get the very next one. So I hope you dig that. I love doing them. I think that's it, actually. There is no more also. Also, I love you guys. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, stay afloat. Peace out.